My name is Elena Peterson and I'm 18 years old. Up until 3 months ago, I would have told you I had a pretty average, boring, and a good way life. Suburban street, two-story house with vinyl siding and a lawn my dad insisted on mowing in perfectly straight lines. Two parents with respectable jobs. Nothing glamorous, nothing tragic, just fine. If you asked my teachers, they'd probably say I'm responsible. The girl who hands in assignments early, works part-time, doesn't cause drama. If you ask my friends, they'd say I'm the one who always has to check her schedule first, because I'm constantly juggling school, my shifts at the grocery store, and whatever my parents need. If you asked my mom, she'd tell you she sacrificed everything for me. She's Patricia, 49, real estate agent, always dressed like she's about to show $1 million listing even when she's just going to Target. Blazer, blowout, designer bag, perfect nails, perfect smile, perfect image. If you asked my dad, Frank, 52, accountant, he'd say I'm a good kid. He irons his khakis on Sunday nights and keeps his car documents in labeled binders, the kind of guy who finds adrenaline in a balanced spreadsheet. To the outside world, we look like a solid middle-class family with a slightly extra mom and a slightly boring dad. Inside, money was this constant hum. Never a full-blown screaming match, but always there. Patricia would glide in with shopping bags, smelling like department store perfume and new leather. Frank's jaw would tighten. Later, after I went to my room, I'd hear the low murmur of their arguments in the kitchen. Not quite words, just the rhythm. Patricia's sharp little bursts, Frank's slower, heavier responses. They renovated the kitchen 2 years ago. Granite countertops, new cabinets, fancy fixtures. Last year, the master bathroom, rain shower, heated floors, the works. They took a cruise to Alaska over the summer, just the two of them. I stayed home and worked extra shifts. Here's the thing, I never thought to question any of it, because in our house, the rule was simple. Food, shelter, basic school stuff, they've got it. Anything else? Get a job, Elena. So I did. I started bagging groceries at 14, moved to cashier at 15, shift lid by 17. By 18, I was working around 25 hours a week while finishing senior year. Every dollar went into a checking account I opened the second I turned 16 and didn't need a parent to co-sign. That account was my freedom fund. New shoes for track? My money. Phone bill? My money. Gas? Definitely my money. Patricia framed it like some kind of life lesson. We're teaching you responsibility. Kids who have everything handed to them grow up entitled. Cool. In theory, I agreed. Work ethic is important. But there was always this tiny stone of resentment in my stomach when I watched my parents drive their nice cars, Frank's newer Lexus, Patricia's Mercedes SUV, and talk about cutting back while also planning their next vacation. I just assumed the math worked out somehow. I mean, they were adults with careers. I was a kid with a part-time job. What did I know? Turns out I knew nothing. The night everything cracked was a random Tuesday. Not a holiday, not my birthday, just pot roast night. Patricia makes the same pot roast once a month like it's a ritual. The house smelled like garlic and rosemary. Frank had just gotten home, loosened his tie, but hadn't taken it off yet. Patricia was half scrolling on her phone, half pretending to listen as I told them about a quiz at school. It was so normal it hurt. Then Frank looked up, almost casually, and said the sentence that detonated my entire life. Elena, is your allowance enough? We can bump it up a bit for senior year if you're short on money. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. My what? I asked. Your allowance, he repeated, frowning like he thought I was joking. The $200 a month I've been depositing into your account since you were 12. I laughed, actually laughed, because it was that absurd. Dad, I've never gotten an allowance, I said. Ever. That's why I've been working since I was 14, to pay for literally everything. The silence after that was wrong. Too heavy, too still. Frank's fork hovered in the air. Patricia's phone slipped from her hand and landed in her mashed potatoes. Elena, my dad said slowly, what do you mean you've never gotten an allowance? I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and turned the screen toward them. This is my account, I said. I've got $1,100. That's from my job. If you'd been putting $200 in every month for 6 years, there'd be, over 14 grand in there? Patricia set her fork down like it might explode. Elena, that's impossible, she said, her voice too bright, too tight. Your father set up automatic transfers. I've seen the statements. Frank pushed back his chair without a word and walked to his home office. A second later, we heard drawers opening, paper rustling, the metallic rattle of a filing cabinet. I stayed at the table, staring at my phone screen like it might rearrange itself and reveal a hidden balance. $200 a month, 6 years, $14,400. I thought about the extra shifts I picked up when Patricia said we couldn't afford the senior trip. The times I lied to friends and said I didn't feel like going out because my gas tank was on E. The nights I fell asleep in my work polo with my earbuds still in because I'd come home too tired to shower first. All those hours, all that effort, and apparently there was supposed to be money I never knew about. Frank came back with a thick folder clutched in both hands. He dropped it on the table so hard, the salt shaker tipped over. He didn't even flinch. "Look," he said, voice sharper than I'd ever heard it. He flipped open the folder and spread out bank statements, his finger tracing a column of transactions. $200, he said, every month, like clockwork. Transfer to Elena Peterson, allowance. I set it up when you were 12. I leaned in. The line items were there, just like he said. Regular payments, same date every month. But the moment I looked at the tiny string of numbers next to Elena Peterson, my stomach lurched. "Dad," I said quietly, "that's not my account number." The room shrank. Patricia snatched a statement, then grabbed my phone, eyes darting back and forth between the digits. Her face did this strange tightening, like she was cycling through panic, anger, and denial in fast forward. "That can't be right," she whispered. "Frank, I've seen these transfers. The bank confirmed them." Frank stared at the papers like they'd personally betrayed him. "I went in person," he said, voice flat. "I filled out the forms. I told them to set up automatic transfers to our daughter's account." He looked at me, and for the first time in my life, my meticulous, binder-loving dad looked genuinely lost. "If it's not your account," he said slowly, "then whose is it?" The question hung in the air, heavy and poisonous. None of us had an answer, but my gut already knew the next part. Whatever the truth was, it was not going to make Patricia look good. Frank was on the phone with the bank before I even finished my cereal the next morning. He didn't wait for their business hours. He called, sat in his office with the cordless phone clamped to his ear, and stabbed at the keypad until he got through to a human being. I hovered in the doorway, arms wrapped around myself, listening to him explain the situation. "My daughter says she's never received these transfers," he said, voice tight but controlled. "I have 6 years of statements showing $200 a month going into an account listed under her name." There was a pause while the person on the other end responded. Frank's jaw clenched. "Yes," he said, "I understand that, but I'm telling you those funds never reached her account." He glanced at me, eyes rimmed red like he hadn't slept. I hadn't either. The bank rep put him on hold. Tinny music buzzed through the speaker. The sound made my skin itch. Patricia sat at the kitchen counter behind me, in a silk robe, staring at the wall, like if she didn't move, she could make herself invisible. Her coffee sat untouched. Her phone, for once, was face down. After what felt like 10 years, Frank spoke again. "Yes, please transfer me to a supervisor," he said. "I'll hold." The music changed. My pulse thudded in my ears, keeping time with the elevator jazz. When the supervisor came on, Frank hit speaker and put the phone on his desk so I could hear. "This is Jennifer," a calm voice said. "I understand you have questions about a recurring transfer." "Yes," Frank said. "I set up automatic transfers, $200 a month, to my daughter Elena. The statements say the funds are going to an account under her name, but the account number does not match hers. We need to know where that money is actually going." "Let me pull this up," Jennifer said. I could almost hear her typing. "Okay, I see the transfers. $200 monthly for 6 years. I show the recipient account under the name, one moment, under the name Elena Peterson Torres." I felt the floor tilt. "Excuse me," Frank said. "Account holder and beneficiary, Elena Peterson Torres," Jennifer repeated. "This account was opened in 2018 by a Ms. Patricia Peterson. She is listed as the primary account holder, with your daughter as the beneficiary." Behind me, Patricia went absolutely still. Not surprised, not confused, just frozen. My dad's face drained of color, then something harder slid into place behind his eyes. "Patricia," he said slowly, not looking at her, "did you open an account under that name?" She didn't answer. "Sir?" Jennifer asked through the speaker. Frank swallowed. "You're certain about the account holder?" "Yes," Jennifer said. "Account opening documents list Patricia Peterson as the owner. Her identification was used to open the account. The transfers from your account have been going there." I stared at my mother, my adoptive mother, the woman who'd always insisted she was the one who showed up when I was sick, when I had school projects, when I needed a ride. She was staring at the countertop, knuckles white around her coffee mug. "Thank you," Frank said to the supervisor. His voice sounded like it had been dragged over sandpaper. "We'll need copies of all documentation associated with that account." "Of course, Mr. Peterson," she said. "We can prepare that for you at the branch." He hung up. The silence that followed had weight. "Patricia," he said very softly, "why is there an account under our daughter's first and last name combined with a surname you never told me about?" She stood up, movement stiff, and reached for her purse on the bar stool. "I need to make a phone call," she said. "This is all a misunderstanding." "To who?" I asked. My voice came out too calm. "Your bank? Your lawyer? My what, exactly?" She didn't answer. She just slung the purse over her shoulder, grabbed her keys, and started walking toward the front door. "Patricia," Frank said again, sharper now, "don't you walk out of this house." She paused at the door, hand on the knob. For a second, I thought maybe she'd turn around and say something, deny everything, confess, cry. She didn't. "I'll be back," she said instead. "We can talk when everyone's calmer." Then she opened the door and left. No slam. Just a quiet, final click. Her car started. Engine revved. The sound faded down the street. Frank sank onto the nearest chair, like all the bones had gone out of his body. He put his head in his hands. I stood there, pulse thudding in my ears, staring at the space where my mother had just been. That's when I saw it. A manila envelope on the floor, half hidden under the coat rack. It must have fallen out of her purse when she grabbed it in a hurry. "Elena," my dad said, voice rough. I walked over and picked it up. The paper was thicker than normal, expensive, official feeling. My name was written on the front in neat, precise handwriting. To Elena Peterson Torres. Underneath, an address I didn't recognize, an apartment complex across town. My palms went cold. "Dad," I said, "look at this." He took the envelope from me with shaking hands, turned it over, and carefully opened the flap. Inside were documents, a stack of them. He carried everything back to the kitchen table like it was a bomb. We sat side by side, the morning light hitting the papers in harsh, unforgiving angles. The first sheet he pulled out was a birth certificate. My breath caught. Name, Elena Torres. Mother, Jessica Torres, 17. Father, unknown. The field for adoptive parents was empty. I felt like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed. I swallowed. My birth certificate doesn't look like that. Frank shuffled through the stack and pulled out another. This one had my current last name, Peterson. Mother, Patricia Peterson. Father, Franklin Peterson. The issue date was months later. "What is this?" I whispered. He didn't answer. His eyes were darting over the papers, faster and faster, like if he moved quickly enough, reality would change. There were hospital records, medical forms, caseworker notes printed in small clinical text. Infant placed in temporary foster care at 3 days old. Birth mother expresses desire to keep child, but lacks stable housing and family support. Meeting scheduled for voluntary relinquishment counseling. I flipped to a photo tucked between the pages and felt the world tilt again. A baby, chubby cheeks, dark hair sticking up in soft little tufts, wrapped in a hospital blanket. Me. But the woman holding me wasn't Patricia. She was younger, late teens maybe, dark hair, tired eyes that still somehow looked soft. Something about her face tugged at the center of my chest, the curve of her mouth, the angle of her nose. On the back of the photo, in Patricia's handwriting, were 4 words. Elena's first mother. Underneath, smaller, "Goodbye for now." My vision blurred. "Dad," I whispered, "what is this? Why does it say, first mother?" Frank took the photo, stared at the writing, then set it down like it burned. He pulled out another document, a thick packet of legal language with my name on the first page. Adoption petition. Adoption decree. Signatures everywhere. Judges. Caseworkers. My parents. Adoptive parents. "Dad," I said again, but the word came out thin, like it had to fight through static. "Was I adopted?" For a long time, he didn't say anything. I watched his face go through stages, confusion, disbelief, dawning horror, then something worse, guilt. "Elena," he finally said, voice shredded. "Yes." The word hit harder than anything else that morning. "Yes," I repeated. "As in, you knew this whole time?" He closed his eyes. "We were going to tell you," he said weakly. The timing." "You had 18 years," I snapped. My voice broke on the last word. You watched me write essays about my family history for school and just what? Let me make it up? He flinched. We thought we were protecting you, he said. It sounded like something he'd told himself often. Your birth mother was 17. She didn't have support. The agency said, Dad. My hands were trembling so hard I had to clench them into fists. I reached into the envelope and pulled out another paper. This one looked newer. A letter. The handwriting was careful, but a little uneven, like someone who didn't write long letters often. My dearest Elena, I had to stop reading for a second. Seeing my name in that unfamiliar hand did something to my breathing. I know this must be confusing. Patricia has been sending me updates about you for years. She promised me that when you turned 18, we could finally meet. The account she set up was my way of contributing to your future from a distance. I've worked 2 jobs to make sure I could send that money every month, even though I make a fraction of what your adoptive father does. I wanted you to have choices I never had. I love you more than you can imagine, and I hope one day you'll understand why I had to let you go. With all my love, your mother, Jessica Torres. My throat closed. 2 jobs, I said hoarsely. She worked 2 jobs to send me money I never saw. Frank looked back and forth between the letter and the transfer statements. I thought that account was for your college, he whispered. I thought the money was going into a fund in your name. Patricia handled the paperwork. She told me. He stopped. We didn't say it out loud, but we were both thinking the same thing. Patricia hadn't just lied to my birth mother. She'd lied to both of us. I stared at the letter again, at the way your mother slanted slightly to the right. I'd spent my entire life believing I had one mother. Turns out I had 2. And one of them had been working 2 jobs to send me money she couldn't afford, trusting the other not to steal it. I folded the letter very carefully, like it might disintegrate if I breathed on it wrong. Dad, I said, feeling something cold and sharp settle in my chest. I'm going to find her. He didn't argue. He just nodded, eyes shining, like he knew he'd already lost the right to stop me. I went to my room and closed the door as quietly as I could. Not because I was calm, but because I was afraid that if I slammed it, the last thin thread holding me together would snap. My room suddenly felt foreign, like the space belonged to some other version of me. The Elena who thought she knew where she came from. Who thought her parents were exactly who they said they were. I sat on my bed, held the letter from Jessica Torres in both trembling hands, and read it again, slowly. Every line pressed deeper into me. 2 jobs, working even though she had so little, sending money every month because she wanted to help, because she loved me. And all that time, Patricia took it, spent it, turned sacrifice into countertops. I wiped my eyes before the tears could fall. Crying felt too small for what was inside me, like trying to put a wildfire into a thimble. I grabbed my laptop and typed her name. Jessica Torres. There were dozens of Jessica Torres accounts online, some private, some inactive, some clearly not her. But the 4th profile picture stopped me completely. A woman with dark hair pulled into a low ponytail. Tired eyes but soft. A slightly crooked smile, exactly like the one that pulled at the left corner of my mouth when I laughed. She looked older than the girl in the photo Patricia kept, but not different. Just real. My hands shook as I clicked message. The cursor blinked at me, like it was daring me to change my life. I typed, Hi, I think you're my birth mother. We need to talk. Elena. I hit send before I lost my nerve. My heart raced so hard I could feel it in my teeth. Then, 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. A new message. Elena, is it really you? My breath punched out of me. I clutched the phone like it was the only solid thing in the room. Before I could overthink it, she sent another message. Can we talk? I can call whenever you're ready. I typed back. Yes, call me, please. My phone rang almost instantly. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until I answered. Hello? I whispered. For a second, there was nothing. Then a voice, soft, shaky, gentle, came through the speaker. Elena, she said. The way she said my name. It wasn't like how Patricia says it. Patricia's voice is always polished, practiced, precise. Jessica's was raw, bare, like she'd practiced it silently for years and finally let herself say it out loud. An ache bloomed in my chest. Yes, I said, it's me. I didn't expect to feel anything, but the moment I heard her, something inside me shifted into place. Quiet, certain, familiar, like hearing a melody I'd forgotten I knew. Jessica inhaled sharply, and I heard her try to steady her breathing. I've waited 18 years to hear your voice, she said softly. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. You don't have anything to apologize for, I whispered. The words came out before I even meant to say them. She sucked in a breath, and then she began to talk. but not rushed, not chaotic, just slowly, honestly, as if each memory was something fragile she'd kept safe for me. She told me she was 17 when she had me, that her parents kicked her out the moment they found out she was pregnant, that she lived in a studio apartment, working 2 part-time jobs while finishing high school. She told me she tried. She tried so hard to keep me. But she collapsed at work one afternoon, from exhaustion, from stress, from starvation-level budgeting, and social services was called to check on the baby. On me. She was deemed unfit because she had no support and no stable income. A caseworker told her the system would take me unless she voluntarily placed me for adoption. They made it sound like I was doing the noble thing, Jessica said, her voice breaking, like loving you meant letting you go. My throat tightened. I didn't want to, she whispered, but I was 17 and terrified, and they promised you'd be placed with a good family, a stable one that would give you everything I couldn't. She paused, then added, like it hurt to say, I believe them. I closed my eyes. She kept talking. When you were 3, I tried to get updates from the agency. They connected me to Patricia. She said she would send pictures, and she did. My stomach twisted. She continued. I told her I wanted to contribute financially, even a little. I wanted to be part of your life in any way she would let me. A shaky exhale. So I started sending $200 every month. It was a lot for me. Sometimes it meant skipping meals. Sometimes it meant choosing between gas and groceries. But it was for you, your college, your future. My hands balled into fists. She told me she was saving it for you, Jessica whispered. She promised me she was putting it into your account. I couldn't speak. Elena, she said softly, did you receive it? I swallowed hard. No, I whispered. I never got a cent of it. The silence that followed was the sound of someone's heart breaking in real time. Oh, she said, a small, trembling word. Then another, barely audible. Oh, God. I couldn't take it. I'm so sorry, I said quickly. It's not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. But her pain felt like it seeped through the phone. I just wanted you to have choices, she whispered. I wanted to give you something. Anything. You did, I said. You gave everything. My voice cracked. It was quiet for a long moment. Then Jessica asked, very gently, Can I see you? It doesn't have to be now. Anytime, whenever you're ready. I wiped my face with my sleeve. Yes, I said. I want to meet you. A small, choked sound came through the phone, something like a laugh mixed with a sob. Okay, she whispered. Whenever you're ready, I'll be here. When the call ended, I sat on my bed staring at my phone, trying to understand how my entire world had twisted, flipped, and cracked open in a single morning. I had another mother, one who had worked 2 jobs, sent money she desperately needed, wrote birthday cards she never got to give me, loved me from a distance because she had no other choice. And Patricia? Patricia had taken every piece of that love and turned it into luxury tile and salmon-colored throw pillows. I exhaled shakily. I'm meeting her, I murmured to myself. Not a question, not a possibility. A decision. A promise. The next few days felt like walking through someone else's life. I couldn't shake the heaviness in my chest. It wasn't just the shock of everything coming to light. It was the realization that I'd spent 18 years living a lie, believing the narrative Patricia had woven around me. Everything I thought I knew about family, about love, was now broken into pieces. I was left to pick up the shards and try to make sense of them. I couldn't stop thinking about Jessica, about the woman who had given me life and then, against every instinct, let me go because she believed it was what was best for me. I'd never had a chance to know her, to thank her for what she did. I couldn't imagine how much it had cost her to make that decision, to let me be raised by strangers, to entrust me to a woman who promised to give me a better life. But that wasn't how it worked, was it? Patricia had taken something precious, something Jessica had given willingly. She hadn't just taken the money. She'd taken the truth, and in doing so, had stolen our bond. I sat at my desk the night before I was supposed to meet Jessica, scrolling through my phone as I tried to distract myself. But nothing could erase the pictures I had seen, the adoption papers, the birth certificates, the letter that Jessica had written to me, which was now folded neatly in my drawer, like a fragile dream. When I clicked on her profile again, my thumb hovered over the button that would bring me one step closer to meeting her. Suddenly, I realized that tomorrow, I would be meeting my real mother, the one who had never stopped thinking about me. My stomach flipped. This wasn't just meeting someone who shared my blood. It was about understanding why I was who I was, why I looked the way I did, why I felt like a stranger in my own life. There was so much to ask her. Why had she never tried to find me before? Was she scared? Did she think I had a perfect life and didn't need her? I leaned back in my chair, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, trying to form words. But I couldn't. Because what do you say to someone who loved you from afar, who had given you everything she could, without ever being given the chance to be your mother? What did I even know about being a daughter? I had never been the one to feel that kind of love. My whole existence with Patricia was built on performance, the way she presented herself, her image, and the way she shaped me into a reflection of that. Was this real? Was meeting Jessica going to shatter everything I thought I knew about family, about love? I spent hours that night rereading her letter, replaying our first conversation, the simple vulnerability in her voice. She was scared. She was afraid that I'd never understand the pain she carried, that I'd never forgive her for what she thought was abandoning me. But here's the thing about forgiveness. It isn't always about the person who wronged you. Sometimes it's about you, about finally giving yourself the space to heal. I realized that for the first time in my life, I wasn't angry. I wasn't holding on to resentment. Instead, I was filled with something else, grief. Not for myself, but for her, for everything she had done in silence. The next morning, I dressed carefully, wanting to look like I wasn't just a stranger meeting another stranger. I wanted to look like someone who had been waiting. I picked a coffee shop near Jessica's neighborhood, one with a small patio that felt private enough for this moment. I didn't want anyone around to overhear, to judge, to make this any more complicated than it already was. I got there early, heart pounding in my chest as I sat at a table by the window. The rain had started, soft but steady, and I watched the droplets race down the glass, their paths twisting and turning in random patterns. Everything felt symbolic. This moment, this meeting, everything. I looked out at the street, waiting, wondering if I was making a mistake. But when I heard the familiar sound of a door opening and closing behind me, I didn't have to look to know who it was. I knew. She stood there for a second like she was gathering herself. Then I saw her. Jessica. She didn't look like I expected. She wasn't some picture-perfect image of a mother I'd built in my mind over the years. She was real, tired but warm. Her eyes were soft, but there was a pain in them too. She stepped toward me, slowly, cautiously, as if she was afraid of breaking me. When she saw me, her face shifted. Something clicked into place. "Elena," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "It's really you." I stood up, and for a moment, neither of us knew what to do. But then I did what felt natural. I walked over to her, and I hugged her. It was an awkward first hug, too long, too tight. But it was everything. I pulled away first, and her face was tear-streaked, her eyes red, but there was a relief in her expression. A weight she hadn't realized she was carrying had lifted. "I can't believe I'm here with you," she said, laughing shakily. "I can't believe I finally get to meet you." I smiled softly. "I've been waiting too." For a long time, we just sat there, drinking coffee, exchanging stories. It was strange at first, like trying to piece together a puzzle that wasn't meant to be solved, but slowly, it started to make sense. I learned about her life, her struggles, the years spent working 2 jobs, the guilt that had followed her every day she wasn't there, the moments when she'd almost called me, almost reached out, but didn't know if I would want her. I didn't ask about Patricia, not yet, but I did ask something else. "Why didn't you try to contact me sooner?" Jessica looked down at her coffee cup, her fingers tracing the rim. "I thought you were better off. I thought the agency promised you'd be happy with your adoptive parents." She swallowed hard. "I didn't want to make things harder for you." She was crying now, but it wasn't tears of regret. It was something else. "I wanted you to know I never stopped loving you," she said, her voice shaking. "I kept track of your birthdays. Every Christmas, I'd write you a card, even though I knew you'd never see it. But I just couldn't bring myself to give up." I reached across the table and took her hand. "You didn't give up," I whispered. "You never did." And that was when I realized she had never given up on me. Not once. We had been separated by circumstances, by the lies of people who didn't understand the depth of a mother's love. But today, we were finally beginning to heal together. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I had found the person who truly understood me. Not the person who had raised me, but the woman who had always been my mother. We spent hours talking, and though the conversation was heavy, it was light in some ways too. Laughter mixed with tears, awkward silences that didn't feel uncomfortable. At the end of the day, I knew my journey wasn't finished. There were still conversations I had to have, things I needed to confront. But for now, I had found something that Patricia had never given me. Truth. And in that truth, I found peace. When I finally walked back into the house later that evening, everything felt wrong. Not different, wrong. Like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Frank was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the manila envelope and all the documents spread out across the surface. He looked older than he had yesterday. Not tired, defeated. Patricia wasn't home. Of course she wasn't. I slid into the chair across from him, still warm from the adrenaline of meeting Jessica, still buzzing with the feeling of belonging I'd never known before. Frank looked up at me. "How was it?" he asked quietly. I didn't know how to answer that. How do you explain meeting the person who gave you life? The person who had cried for you, prayed for you, worked herself to the bone, thinking she was helping you? "It was good," I said finally. "Emotional, but good." He nodded, swallowing hard. "Then, I'm glad." His voice cracked on the last word, and something in my chest softened, but only a little. We sat in silence for a moment, staring at the papers between us. Birth certificates, hospital records, Jessica's letter. Finally, I spoke. "We need to talk about the money." Frank exhaled slowly. Yes, we do." I leaned forward, hands clasped. "That money wasn't mine," I said. "It was hers. Jessica worked 2 jobs to send it because she thought it was going toward my future." My voice tightened. "She went without food some weeks just to make sure she could contribute, and Patricia stole it." Frank closed his eyes. "Elena, I swear to you," he said, voice strained, "I thought that account was yours. Patricia told me she set it up with the bank. She handled everything." He rubbed his forehead. "I didn't know." I believed him. Frank wasn't the kind of man who could lie without twitching like someone stuck with a guilt rash. But believing him didn't erase the damage. "Dad, she took 14,400 from Jessica." He nodded slowly. "Yes. And she spent it on kitchen renovations, cruises, clothes." "Yes," he said softly. "It wasn't hers," I whispered. "She stole it." Frank met my eyes. "Then what do you want to do?" The question felt like a knife, sharp and heavy at the same time. There was only one answer. "I want to file charges," I said. "Not for me, for Jessica. She deserves justice." Frank didn't flinch. He didn't argue. He didn't try to stop me. He just nodded. "All right." That's when the front door opened. Patricia walked in like she hadn't blown up our entire lives 48 hours earlier. She wore the same expression she used to put on at open houses. Neutral, pleasant, carefully controlled. But her eyes were too wide. Her purse strap dug hard into her shoulder. She'd been clenching it. "Elena," she said, voice overly calm. Then she turned to Frank. "We should talk. All of us." Frank stood up slowly, like a fault line ready to crack. Patricia took a breath. "Look, I know there's been a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" I cut in, my voice so cold I barely recognized it. Patricia flinched. "Elena, please, I was only trying to protect you." "From what?" I demanded. She hesitated, just long enough to prove she had no answer. Frank pulled out a chair and pointed. "Sit." She did. He placed the stack of documents in front of her. "All of this," he said quietly. "Explain it." Patricia's face tightened. "Elena was going to meet her birth mother at 18, she said. I needed to make sure she stayed with us until then. I didn't want her running off, getting confused, thinking she belonged somewhere else." My jaw dropped. "You stole from her so I wouldn't leave you?" "No," she snapped, then corrected herself. "I mean, no, it wasn't like that. I was just maintaining stability. You don't understand how much I've sacrificed for this family." I stared at her. "Jessica worked 2 jobs to send money she didn't even have. You took it, you spent it. And you call that sacrifice?" Patricia's voice wavered. "I deserve something for raising you." I blinked. "You didn't raise me," I said quietly. "You controlled me." Frank's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Patricia, where is the money?" She hesitated again. Her face got that pinched look, like she was calculating angles. "Elena doesn't need it," she said finally. "She's going to college. Frank has savings. She'll be fine. That money went toward things she benefited from. The car, the house, her school tuition." "Don't!" Frank said sharply. "Don't you dare spin this as generosity." She tried again. "The bank account was in my name. Legally, the money belonged to me. That's how the system works." "That's not how morality works," I said. She ignored me. "Elena is my daughter," Patricia continued, her voice rising. "I did what I had to do to take care of our family." "Family?" I repeated, laughing bitterly. "You took money meant for my future so you could get new granite countertops." She stood up suddenly. "You can't press charges," she said sharply. "This will ruin us, ruin everything." "No," I said softly. "You ruined everything." She pointed at me, shaking. "You are going to destroy this family." I held her gaze. This family was built on lies. And something inside Patricia cracked. Her voice rose into a hysterical pitch. You ungrateful. After everything I've done. After... Frank slammed his hand on the table. Enough. Patricia froze, mouth open. Elena wants to file a police report, he said evenly, and I support her. Patricia's face drained of color. You can't, she whispered. Frank, you can't side with her. But he already had. And then he did something none of us saw coming. I'm filing for divorce. The room went still. It was Patricia who broke the silence. She laughed, a thin, hysterical sound. You're bluffing. Frank didn't blink. I'll be serving you this week. Her smile slid right off her face. Frank continued, voice made of steel. And I'm requesting a forensic audit of all our finances, every account, every loan, every signature. Patricia swayed like she'd been hit. No, she whispered. No, you can't do that. You can't. Frank stepped back from her. Elena, he said, turning to me, we'll go to the police tomorrow morning. Patricia dropped into her chair as if her legs gave out. She looked up at us, eyes darting between me and Frank, her breath shaking. Elena, she pleaded, please don't do this. I'm your mother. No, I said softly. You're the woman who raised me. That's not the same thing. For the first time in my life, Patricia was speechless. She didn't scream. She didn't manipulate. She didn't spin some story. She just sat there, silent, terrified. And I understood something. She wasn't afraid of losing me. She was afraid of losing control. My voice shook, not with fear, but with clarity. I'm pressing charges, I said, and I'm not changing my mind. Patricia's face drained of color completely, because she finally understood something too. This time she couldn't talk her way out, couldn't guilt me, couldn't twist the truth. This time the law was coming, and everything she'd built on lies was about to collapse. Patricia was charged 3 weeks after we walked into the police station. Identity theft, fraud, financial exploitation, forgery, misappropriation of funds intended for a minor. The list felt endless. Small-town court systems move slowly, but gossip spreads fast. Within days, neighbors stopped waving from their lawns. The real estate office temporarily suspended Patricia. Every church friend she bragged to about me mysteriously stopped returning her calls. But none of that compared to the storm brewing inside our house. Frank moved into the guest room within a week, then into an apartment 2 weeks later. By the time the first hearing rolled around, he wasn't wearing his wedding ring anymore. Patricia, on the other hand, spiraled. The woman who once curated every detail of her image, down to the brand of her mascara, now showed up to court with a messy bun and stress-gray roots. 2 weeks in, she'd lost so much weight her blazer hung on her shoulders like an empty hanger. But even like that, she never stopped trying to regain control. She begged, she pleaded, she threatened, she guilt-tripped. But she never apologized. Not once. Every time she spoke to me, she said things like, "You can't do this to me. We're family. Family doesn't drag each other to court. You'll regret this when you're older. You're being manipulated. You're ruining my life." I told her the same thing every time. You already ruined mine. The trial began in late spring. Everyone showed up. Frank, my aunt's old neighbors, people Patricia used to sell houses to, even Jessica and Ryan sitting quietly on the far side of the courtroom, hands intertwined as if grounding each other. I sat between them and Frank. 3 parents in their own ways, but only 2 who cared whether I was okay. Patricia arrived in the courtroom looking like a ghost wearing a pressed blazer. Her lawyer, slick hair, shiny shoes, the kind of guy who called the judge Your Honor like he was trying to sell her a condo, walked with her. The jurors looked tired before anything even started, and when the prosecution opened their argument, they set the tone immediately. This case is not about a misunderstanding. It is about calculated, sustained deception. Patricia's lawyer objected immediately, because of course he did. But it didn't matter. Evidence is louder than indignation. I testified first. My voice didn't shake, not because I wasn't nervous, but because I'd spent months feeling like I had to hold everything together. Compared to that, answering questions under oath felt simple. They asked when I learned about the allowance. They asked what my bank account looked like. They asked how many years I'd worked part-time while money meant for me disappeared. I answered clearly. I saw Patricia staring at me the whole time, her eyes wide and glossy, like she couldn't believe I was actually doing this. But I didn't look away, because I wasn't the one who did something unforgivable. When the prosecutor asked, "How did it feel to discover this?" I answered honestly. It felt like my entire life had been built on lies. The jurors scribbled notes. Patricia stared at the table. Then came Jessica. The temperature in the room shifted when she took the stand. She wore a simple blouse, no makeup. her hands shaking slightly as she adjusted the microphone. Her voice was soft, too soft at first, but it strengthened as she spoke. She told them about being 17, homeless, working 2 jobs while trying to finish high school, being pressured into believing adoption was the only way to save me. She held up the stack of birthday cards she had written for me every single year and saved. The courtroom was silent. You could hear people breathing. When the prosecutor asked, "Why did you send the money?" Jessica's answer was simple. "I wanted my daughter to have a chance, even if I couldn't be there." Her voice cracked. People in the gallery blinked hard. Even the judge paused before continuing. Then came the worst part, the financial breakdown. Dollar by dollar, category by category, how Patricia had spent it. Granite countertops, $8,000, car down payment, $4,000, private school tuition, $3,000, Alaska cruise, $2,000, miscellaneous, $1,400. Jessica listened, shoulders trembling. Her lawyer placed a hand over hers. It was brutal. It was necessary. And Patricia? She sat rigid, staring straight ahead like maybe if she didn't move, she could pretend none of this was happening. Finally, after weeks of testimony, documents, audits, and arguments, the day of sentencing arrived. Everyone showed up. I'd never seen a courtroom so packed. The judge, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and no patience for theatrics, read through her notes. Then she looked at Patricia. "Mrs. Peterson," she began, "this court has reviewed extensive evidence showing your involvement in long-term financial deception." Patricia stared at the floor. "Your actions were not impulsive. They were consistent, calculated, and carried out over many years." Her voice sharpened. "You stole from a teenage mother, a mother who believed she was contributing to her daughter's future." I saw Patricia swallow. "You took advantage of her youth, her vulnerability, and her trust. You intercepted funds meant to support a child. You used them for your own luxury and comfort." Patricia blinked rapidly, not because she felt guilty, but because she finally realized this judge saw straight through her. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "you involved your husband and deceived him as well. You forged signatures. You opened accounts under false pretenses. You committed identity theft." The gallery was silent. "Mrs. Peterson," the judge said, voice lowering, "this court finds your actions particularly egregious." Patricia finally looked up. Tears spilled over her cheeks. They were not the tears of someone sorry. They were the tears of someone who finally realized her charm wasn't going to save her. "On 6 counts of fraud," the judge said, "this court sentences you to 18 months in state custody." Patricia gasped. "On 2 counts of identity theft, this court orders restitution in the amount of $32,000 to Jessica Torres." Jessica's hand tightened around mine. Patricia's lawyer whispered frantically to her. The judge lifted a hand. "I have heard your attorney's request for leniency due to your community involvement and lack of prior convictions." She paused, but I find those arguments unpersuasive. Patricia let out a sound, half cry, half plea. The judge continued, unwavering. "You presented yourself as a respectable member of the community while systematically defrauding a young mother. You prioritized appearances over integrity, and you showed no remorse until you were caught." Then, "Bailiff!" Patricia flinched when the officer stepped toward her. "Elena!" she cried out suddenly, reaching for me. "Elena, please, don't let them—" I didn't move, didn't speak. I just looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, I felt nothing. Not anger, not hatred, not grief. Just clarity. She had done this. The bailiff's hand rested on her arm. The judge nodded. Court adjourned. Patricia Peterson was led away, still calling my name, still trying to reach out towards someone who no longer existed in her world. And for the first time in months, I felt free. Patricia served 14 months of her 18-month sentence. The day she was released, nobody was waiting for her at the gate. Not Frank, not me, not even the sister she used to brag endlessly to during holidays, who blocked her number halfway through the trial. But honestly, the real sentence began after she got out. Because prison hadn't taken the thing Patricia valued most, her image. But the fallout did. Her real estate license was permanently revoked. The local newspaper had run 3 articles on her case. Neighbors whispered. Former clients avoided her in grocery store aisles. She applied for jobs everywhere, from boutiques to office assistant positions, but every background check came back stamped with the same unforgiving truth. Fraud, identity theft, conviction. Eventually, she ended up stocking shelves at a dollar store on the edge of town. $11 an hour. Night shift. 0 benefits. Frank told me she lived in a tiny studio near the freeway. Cracked windows. Peeling paint. thin walls where you could hear every cough from the tenants next door. She drove a 15-year-old sedan that stalled at red lights. Patricia had always lived like the world was a stage, and she was the leading lady. Now the audience was gone, the curtain was down, and the spotlight was cold. Frank and I rebuilt slowly, like people trying to reassemble a house after an earthquake. We started easy, weekly dinners at a diner he liked, old-fashioned booths, laminated menus, the kind of place where the fries came with too much salt, but somehow it helped. He apologized, over and over. Not in the dramatic way Patricia would have, but quietly, sincerely, like a man sifting through rubble. One night, over a plate of pancakes he didn't touch, he said, "I should have known. I should have checked. I should have questioned her." I shook my head gently. "You trusted the wrong person," I said. "That doesn't make you a bad father." He looked down, voice breaking, but it made me a blind one. Frank wasn't perfect. He'd missed signs. He'd let Patricia dominate the household without challenging her, but he'd also stood by me when it mattered. He testified. He filed for divorce. He backed every choice I made. Sometimes the measure of a parent isn't whether they never fail, but what they do after they realize they have. And Frank had chosen to show up. As for Jessica, she became a constant in my life, slowly, steadily, like sunrise easing across a dark room. After graduation, I moved in with her and Ryan. It wasn't glamorous. They lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment across town. Secondhand furniture, a kitchen with linoleum flooring curled at the edges, windows that stuck in summer. But it felt more like home than the house I grew up in ever did. No whispering arguments behind closed doors, no silent treatments, no pressure to perform or behave perfectly. Just honesty, warmth, a quiet sense of belonging I didn't even know I'd been missing. Jessica loved routine. She woke up early, made eggs the same way every morning, soft scramble, garlic salt, a little cream. She'd slide a plate toward me without asking if I wanted some. "Eat, mija," she'd say, and I would. Ryan wasn't a talker, but he showed love in every practical way. Fixing my car when it made weird noises, insisting on paying for my textbooks, leaving snacks on my desk before midterms. He never tried to replace Frank. He just made space for himself gently, steadily. My Uncle Tyler drove in from Colorado that summer with his wife and 3 kids, watching my cousins, kids who shared my nose, my crooked smile, my laugh, felt like stepping into a mirror I'd never known existed. It was overwhelming. It was healing. It was everything. Before he left, Tyler hugged me and whispered, "Your mom never stopped loving you. You were always her first story, her favorite one." And I knew he meant it. In the fall, I started at the State University, majoring in social work. I wanted to help families like mine. Girls like Jessica, kids like me, futures that could go differently if someone just paid attention. Jessica cried the day she dropped me off. Ryan pretended not to cry, but his voice cracked when he handed me the dorm key. And Frank, he came too. He and Jessica stood together awkwardly in my tiny dorm room. 2 people who had every reason to hate each other, but were trying anyway. Ryan broke the tension by asking Frank whether accountants actually slept during tax season. Frank cracked a smile for the first time in months. It wasn't perfect, but it was peaceful. And that felt like a miracle. The restitution money the judge ordered, $32,000, was deposited into Jessica's account 8 months after the sentencing. She showed it to me on her phone, tears in her eyes. "This is yours," she said. "It always was." But she refused to keep a single cent. She divided it into 2 accounts, one for my college tuition, one for my future children. "This money was always meant to build your future," she said softly. "I'm just putting it where it should have gone from the beginning." Frank, trying to make amends in his own way, set up a scholarship at my old high school for students from single-parent homes. The name? The Jessica Torres Scholarship Fund. Not because she died, but because, in his words, her sacrifice deserves to be remembered. Jessica cried when she heard that. Not the silent tears she usually tried to hide, but real open sobbing. She hugged Frank for the first time, and Frank let her. Now, halfway through my sophomore year, I have everything I never thought I'd get. A mother who loves me without conditions. A father trying every day to be better. A support system that's messy and imperfect and real. A future I'm building with my own hands. A family I chose and who chose me back. Sometimes I think about the money Jessica sent all those years, the allowance I never got. But now it's paying for something bigger than a cruise or countertops. It's paying for my education, my independence, my identity. It's paying for the version of me who finally knows who she is and where she belongs. Jessica once joked, "I guess I really was giving you an allowance all those years. You just didn't get to spend it. Now, I'm spending every bit of it becoming the woman I was meant to be.